Welcome to this explainer. So, imagine waking up on May 4th, 2026, and seeing that two of the fiercest rivals in the entire tech world, Anthropic and OpenAI, had just launched almost identical enterprise consulting firms, literally hours apart. No, it wasn't some glitch in your newsfeed. It was the starting gun of a massive, heavily coordinated pivot designed to hijack a $1.4 trillion industry right under our noses. Today, we are breaking down the source material to figure out exactly why these cutting-edge AI labs are suddenly trying to become your next corporate consultants.
Okay, really quickly, here is our roadmap to unpack this whole Trojan horse strategy. We're going to cover the billion-dollar pivot, the 6-to-1 secret, the private equity playbook, threatening the Big Four, the Anthropic IPO master plan, and finally, 3 futures for AI services. Let's get right into it.
The billion-dollar pivot.
To really grasp the sheer magnitude of what went down on May 4th, we need to look at these two rival juggernauts side by side. We're essentially watching a bifurcated oligopoly taking shape in real time. On one side, you have Anthropic's highly efficient $1.5 billion joint venture, backed by financial titans like Blackstone and Goldman Sachs, and on the other, OpenAI's absolutely massive $10 billion vehicle funded by heavyweights like TPG. Now notice the huge contrast in scale there. OpenAI's vehicle is nearly 7 times larger out of the gate, but the underlying blueprint? It's identical. Both of these frontier labs have clearly realized that simply selling AI software subscriptions? Yeah, it's just not cutting it anymore.
The true goal behind this pivot is captured perfectly by Mark Nachman over at Goldman Sachs. He called it democratizing access to forward-deployed engineers. See, they aren't trying to sell you traditional management consulting. Not at all. They're structurally mirroring Palantir's famous forward-deployed model. The strategy is to literally parachute specialized AI engineers directly into mid-sized companies, think regional health systems or manufacturers, to fundamentally rewire their workflows from the inside. Instead of just handing a CEO a shiny new AI tool and wishing them the best of luck, they are sending in the mechanics to rebuild the engine while the car is speeding down the highway.
Moving on to Section 2, the 6-to-1 secret.
So, why go through all the headache of building a completely new business model? Well, it boils down to this one number, $6. This is the brutal, kind of unspoken secret of the enterprise software industry. For every single dollar a company spends on software licenses, they spend approximately $6 on the services required to implement, customize, and actually manage the thing. The AI labs have been fighting tooth and nail over that $1 of software revenue. But now, they want the other 6.
And those $6 add up to a staggeringly massive $1.4 trillion pie. Just look at how this market breaks down. You've got the strategy tier up at the top and the massive systems integration tier, which is heavily dominated by the Big Four. But underneath all of that lies the ultimate gold mine, the mid-market. This segment is perfectly vulnerable. It is way too small for the giant Big Four consulting firms to really care about, but their operations are way too complex for just a basic self-service AI subscription. The AI labs are stepping perfectly into this gap, and honestly, they've found the ultimate partners to unlock it.
Which brings us to Section 3, the private equity playbook.
Because the engine driving this whole disruption, well, actually, it's not just tech, it's private equity. We aren't merely talking about deep pockets here. Even with backers like Blackstone, Hellman & Friedman, and Apollo, we are looking at a captive, pre-packaged customer base. These PE titans hold a built-in universe of up to 2,500 mid-market companies, meaning the joint venture doesn't need to spend years cold calling and building a massive sales pipeline. They already have a pre-existing total addressable market owned by people who have a massive direct economic incentive to deploy AI immediately.
The capture logic here is brutally brilliant. Step 1, the private equity firm acquires a mid-market company. Step 2, instead of hiring crazy expensive external consultants to come in and optimize the business, the PE firm mandates the use of their own joint venture's AI engineers. And step 3, they capture all of that massive operational value internally. By co-owning the AI services entity, these PE firms stop bleeding hundreds of millions of dollars in external advisory fees, and they keep all that AI-driven margin expansion squarely in their own pockets. It's a win-win for them.
Section 4, threatening the Big Four.
So what actually happens to the legacy consulting giants, your Deloittes, your PwCs, when the very software creators they rely on become the consultants? Well, they lose something critical, exclusive equity alignment. Sure, the Big Four will probably keep a solid grip on those massive Fortune 500 transformations, but Anthropic and OpenAI now have every structural reason to favor their own joint ventures for the mid-market. But the much deadlier threat here is the impending talent drain. The best and brightest forward deploy engineers, They're going to flock to these new AI joint ventures for better pay, equity upside, and frankly, the sheer thrill of working on the absolute frontier of AI. It's going to trigger a truly vicious talent war.
Okay, let's pivot to Section 5, the Anthropic IPO Master Plan.
If we pull the lens back for a second, we realize Anthropic's moves weren't just about launching a consulting firm. Not even close. It was a highly orchestrated PR sprint designed strictly for Wall Street. Just look at this incredibly tight 3-day timeline. May 4th, they announced the joint venture, proving they have distribution scale. May 6th, they dropped news of a massive compute deal with SpaceX, proving infrastructure scale. May 7th, they launched highly specialized finance agent templates, proving vertical productization. Guys, this is an absolute masterclass in IPO positioning. In exactly 72 hours, they deliberately checked off every single box an institutional investor wants to see.
And the ultimate goal of that carefully crafted narrative? It's this staggering number, a $900 billion valuation. According to the source data we're analyzing, Anthropic's annual recurring revenue skyrocketed from $9 billion to over $30 billion. In just 3 months, that is insane growth. This perfectly coordinated sprint is aimed straight at justifying that massive valuation, setting the absolute perfect stage for an IPO as early as October 2026. They aren't just building a business here, they are racing to the public market to establish total dominance.
Finally, Section 6, 3 futures for AI services.
So, where does this $1.4 trillion collision course actually leave us over the next 36 months? Well, our source defines 3 probable outcomes. The largest slice, sitting at a 50% probability, is the base case, basically a coexistence where the new AI joint ventures capture the mid-market while the Big Four partner up and heavily defend their massive enterprise accounts. Then you've got the 35% bull case. This is rapid disruption where the joint ventures scale incredibly fast and their nimble deployment absolutely crushes traditional consulting timelines. And lastly, a 15% bear case. This represents execution failure because, let's be real, scaling embedded engineers across thousands of highly diverse companies is operationally brutal.
And that execution test, it starts right now. Look, narratives and timelines are fantastic for Wall Street hype, but for investors and industry watchers, the true test of this entire strategy will be actual customer traction in the first 90 to 180 days. Can they actually deploy these engineers into regional banks and random manufacturers and show real, measurable productivity gains quickly? Nailing that execution is the ultimate test of whether this massive pivot will actually succeed.
Which leaves us staring down one massive question. Are we currently witnessing the death of the traditional human consultant as the core of enterprise transformation? And ultimately, between Anthropic and OpenAI, who is actually going to win the race to that 2026 IPO? The ground under a $1.4 trillion industry has permanently shifted. I'll leave you to think about that. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. And as always, stay curious.